If you enjoy stories about false accusations, standing up for truth, and exposing corruption, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and comment your thoughts below. Your support means everything. I'm 54 years old, and I'll never forget the morning my boss Martin Caldwell stormed in my office, face red with rage, and screamed, "Where's the $1.5 million I gave you last month?" I looked up from my computer, completely confused. What, $1.5 million? Martin, I have no idea what you're talking about. "Don't play dumb with me, Raymond," he shouted, slamming his hand on my desk. "I transferred $1.5 million into the company account for the Henderson project. You were supposed to use it for materials and contractors. Where is it?" My heart started racing. I'd been the project manager at Caldwell Construction for 23 years. I'd never stolen a penny, never even taken office supplies home. This accusation was insane. "Martin, I never received any transfer," I said, pulling up our company account on my screen. "Look, the Henderson project account shows our usual funding. There's no $1 million deposit here." Martin leaned over my shoulder, staring at the screen. His jaw tightened. "You deleted it. You transferred it somewhere else. I know what you did, Raymond." "I did nothing." I stood up, matching his intensity. "Show me the transfer record. Show me proof you sent this money." Martin straightened up, his expression shifting from angry to cold. "I don't need to prove anything to you. You're fired. Pack your things and get out." "Fired? For what?" "For money I never received. For theft. For embezzlement. I'm calling the police right now." He pulled out his phone. Panic flooded through me. This was crazy. Completely insane. But Martin was serious. His finger was already dialing. "Wait," I said, trying to stay calm. "Martin, we've worked together for 23 years. You know me. You know I wouldn't steal from you. Let's look at this logically. Show me the transfer documentation. We can trace where the money actually went." "I know where it went," Martin said coldly. "Into your account. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Waiting for a big enough payday to disappear." "That's ridiculous. Check my accounts. I have nothing to hide." "Oh, I will. The police will check everything. And when they find that money, you're going to prison, Raymond, for a long time." He walked out of my office. I stood there, shaking, trying to understand what just happened. $1.5 million? I'd never seen that kind of money in my life. And Martin was accusing me of stealing it? Something was very wrong here. And I needed to figure out what before I ended up in handcuffs. I immediately called our company accountant, Beverly. She'd been with Caldwell Construction almost as long as I had. If anyone could make sense of this, it was her. "Bev, it's Raymond. I need you to pull up all transactions for the Henderson project from the last 3 months. Every single one." "Raymond, what's going on?" "Martin just sent out an email saying you're terminated effective immediately. Security is on their way to escort you out." My stomach dropped. He's accusing me of stealing $1.5 million. Money I never saw, never received, and can't account for. I need those records before security gets here. Beverly was quiet for a moment. Then, "Send me your personal email. I'll forward everything I can. But Raymond, if Martin's accusing you of theft, I could get fired for helping you." "I understand. But Bev, you know me. You know I'd never steal. Something's wrong here, and I need to figure out what." "Okay, give me 5 minutes." I heard footsteps in the hallway. Security. I quickly logged out of my work computer, grabbed my personal phone, and started photographing documents on my desk. Project budgets, contractor agreements, anything that might help prove my innocence. 2 security guards appeared in my doorway. "Mr. Raymond Hayes, we need you to come with us." I nodded, grabbing my jacket. "Can I take my personal items?" "You can take personal belongings. No work documents, no files, no electronics." They walked me through the office like a criminal. My coworkers stared, whispered. After 23 years of loyal service, I was being escorted out like a thief. In the parking lot, one of the guards handed me a box with my personal items, photos of my late wife Margaret, my coffee mug, a few books. Everything else stayed behind. "Mr. Hayes, You're not to return to company property. If you do, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Understand? I nodded, too numb to argue. Drove home in a daze. Sat in my living room staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Email from Beverly. Attached our Henderson Project records. Be careful, Raymond. Something doesn't add up in these numbers. I opened the attachments on my laptop, started going through every transaction, every invoice, every payment. The Henderson Project was a commercial building renovation, budgeted at $4 million total. We'd spent about $2 million so far on materials, labor, and permits. Nothing showed a $1.5 million deposit. Not in any account. Not at any time. So, where was Martin getting this number? Why was he claiming he'd given me money that clearly didn't exist in any company record? Unless this wasn't about money I'd stolen. Maybe it was about money Martin was trying to hide. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Raymond Hayes? A professional woman's voice. Yes. This is Detective Laura Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need you to come in for questioning regarding allegations of embezzlement. I met Detective Morrison at the police station the next morning. She was mid-40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. She led me to an interview room. Mr. Hayes, your employer Martin Caldwell has filed a complaint alleging you embezzled $1.5 million from his company. Can you tell me about that? I can tell you it never happened, I said firmly. Martin claims he gave me that money last month for a construction project. But there's no record of it. No deposit, no transfer, nothing. Mr. Caldwell provided bank statements showing a transfer of $1.5 million from his personal account to the company account on October 15th. My breath caught. That's impossible. I've seen the company accounts. There's no deposit like that. Detective Morrison slid papers across the table. Bank statements from Martin's personal account showing exactly what she described. A $1.5 million transfer to Caldwell Construction's main account on October 15th. Do you have access to company accounts, Mr. Hayes? I have access to project-specific accounts, not the main operating account. Only Martin and Beverly, our accountant, have full access to that. So you wouldn't necessarily see deposits into the main account? I guess not. But Martin said he gave me this money for the Henderson project. That project has its own account that I do manage. There's no deposit there. Detective Morrison made notes. Mr. Caldwell claims you had authorization to transfer money from a main account to project accounts. He says you transferred his deposit, but never applied it to the Henderson project. Instead, you moved it to a personal account. That's a lie, I said, voice rising. I never transferred any money from a main account. I don't even have that authorization. We'll need to verify that. I'll need access to your bank accounts, Mr. Hayes. All of them. If you're innocent, this will clear you quickly. Fine. I have nothing to hide. I provided my bank information, credit card accounts, everything. You'll see I have about $43,000 in savings, $22,000 in checking. That's it. No mysterious million-dollar deposits. Detective Morrison wrote it all down. We'll verify this. In the meantime, don't leave the state. We may have more questions. I left the police station feeling sick. Martin had bank statements showing a deposit, but the company accounts didn't show that money. Where had it gone? I called Beverly again. Bev, I need to ask you something. On October 15th, did Martin deposit $1.5 million into the company's main operating account? Long pause. Raymond, I shouldn't be talking to you about this. Bev, please. Martin's accusing me of stealing money. The police are involved. I need to know, did that deposit happen or not? Another pause. Then, quietly, yes, October 15th. $1.5 million from Martin's personal account into our operating account. Then where did it go? Why is it showing in any project account? I don't know. Martin told me not to allocate it yet. Said he'd handle the Henderson project funding personally. Then 2 weeks later, he called me asking where it was. I thought he'd moved it himself. Wait, I said, mind racing. Martin deposited money. Told you not to allocate it. Then 2 weeks later accused me of stealing it. That's what happened. Raymond, I think Martin's setting you up. I think he moved that money somewhere and is blaming you to cover his tracks. That made terrible sense. Bev, I need you to pull every transaction from the main account for the last 2 months. Every transfer, every withdrawal. Can you do that without Martin knowing? He'll fire me if he finds out. He's trying to send me to prison for something I didn't do. Please, Bev, I need help. She sighed heavily. Give me until tonight. I'll send what I can. That evening, Beverly sent a massive file of account records. I spent hours going through them, making notes, tracking money flows. And then I found it. October 16th, the day after Martin's deposit, there was a transfer of $1.5 million in the company operating account to something labeled MC Holdings LLC. MC Martin Caldwell. He'd move his own money into a shell company, then accuse me of stealing it. But why? What was he trying to accomplish? I researched MC Holdings. Found incorporation papers filed 6 months ago. Listed owner, Martin Caldwell. Address, a P.O. box in Nevada. Martin had created a company specifically to hide money, and he was using me as a scapegoat. I needed a lawyer. Fast. I hired Theodore Brennan, a defense attorney with experience in white-collar crime cases. He was expensive, $5,000 retainer, but I didn't have a choice. Tell me everything, Theodore said when we met at his office. I explained the whole situation, Martin's accusation, the missing money, what Beverly had found, the transfer to MC Holdings. Theodore listened carefully, taking notes. This sounds like classic embezzlement, but not by you. By Martin. He moved money into a shell company, then accused you of the theft to cover his tracks. The question is why. What do you mean? Why does Martin need to hide $1.5 million? Is he evading taxes? Hiding assets in a divorce? Defrauding business partners? There's a reason for this setup, and we need to find it. How do we do that? We investigate Martin. His finances, his business dealings, his personal life. If he's desperate enough to frame you, he's in serious trouble himself. We find out what kind of trouble. We can prove your innocence and expose his crime simultaneously. Theodore hired a private investigator named Jackson Ward. Over the next 2 weeks, Jackson dug into Martin's life. What he found was explosive. Martin was broke. Despite appearing successful, he'd been hemorrhaging money for years. Bad investments, gambling debts, maintaining a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He owed money to dangerous people. Not quite mob-level dangerous, but close enough. The $1.5 million, borrowed from an investment group Martin had been running. Basically a Ponzi scheme. He'd taken money from new investors, promising huge returns, but instead of investing it, he'd been using it to pay off old investors and fund his lifestyle. The investment group is demanding returns. Jackson explained during our meeting. Martin doesn't have the money to pay them. So he moved their money into MC Holdings, a shell company they don't know about, and accused you of stealing it. When the investors come asking, he'll say the funds were embezzled, and he's pursuing legal action to recover them. That's insane, I said. When they investigate, they'll find the truth. Maybe, Theodore said. Or maybe Martin disappears with the money before anyone can investigate. You go to prison for theft. He goes to the Cayman Islands or somewhere without extradition. It's a classic con. So what do? We expose him before he can disappear. We take this evidence to the police, to the investors, to anyone who'll listen. We turn the tables. But that was easier said than done. Detective Morrison seemed skeptical when I tried explaining the shell company situation. Mr. Hayes, you're accused of theft. Now you're claiming your boss is actually the thief? That seems convenient. Detective, look at the transfers. October 16th, the day after Martin deposited money. $1.5 million moved to MC Holdings. That's Martin's company. He moved his own money, then blamed me. Do you have proof that Martin owns MC Holdings? I showed her the incorporation papers Jackson had found. It's right here. Martin Caldwell, sole owner. Detective Morrison studied the papers. This is interesting, But it doesn't prove you didn't steal the money. Maybe you both stole it. Or maybe Martin is trying to hide assets, but you also embezzled funds. I need more than this. I left the police station frustrated. We had evidence of Martin's shell company. But apparently that wasn't enough. I needed something definitive. Proof that Martin had deliberately framed me. We need to catch him in the act, Theodore suggested. Get him to admit what he did. On recording. How? He's not going to confess to me. He thinks I'm going to prison. Then we make him think he's won. We make him comfortable, confident. Then we record him bragging about his brilliant plan. It was risky, but I didn't have better options. Theodore reached out to one of Martin's investors, a man named Russell Pemberton, who put $300,000 into Martin's investment scheme. Mr. Pemberton, I'm representing Raymond Hayes. I have reason to believe Martin Caldwell embezzled money from his own investors, including you. Would you be willing to help us prove it? Russell was immediately interested. If Martin stole my money, I want him prosecuted. What do you need? We need you to confront Martin. Demand to know where your returns are. We'll wire you for audio. Get him talking about the missing money, about Raymond, about anything. If he slips up, we'll have him. Russell agreed. 2 days later, wearing a wire provided by Theodore, he met Martin at a coffee shop, Jackson, and I listened from a van parked outside. Martin, we need to talk, Russell said, his voice coming through clearly. It's been 8 months. You promised returns in 6. Where's my money? Russell, I've explained this, Martin said, sounding tired. We had a setback. One of my project managers embezzled funds. We're recovering what we can through legal action. This project manager, Raymond Hayes? I read about that. How much did he steal? $1.5 million. It's a significant loss. But we're prosecuting. We'll recover funds. When? These things take time. But I promise your investment is safe. We'll make you whole. Russell pressed harder. Martin, I need something concrete. I need proof that my money isn't just gone. Show me account statements. Show me where my investment actually is. Martin was quiet for a moment. Then, Russell, are you questioning my integrity? I'm questioning where my $300,000 went. You said it was invested in construction projects. I want to see those projects. The projects are confidential. Then I want my money back. Now, liquidate my investment. I'm done waiting. Martin's tone changed, became sharp. You can't just pull out. There are terms, penalties. I don't care about penalties. I want my money. If you can't produce it, I'm going to the police. Long pause. Then Martin said something that changed everything. Fine. Give me a week. I'll get your money from the MC Holdings account. But this conversation stays between us. Russell kept pushing. MC Holdings? What's that? Nothing. Just an account I use for certain transactions. You'll get your money. Just keep quiet about this. We had it. Martin admitting on tape that the money was in MC Holdings, the shell company he'd created. That, combined with the transfer records, proved he'd moved the money himself. Theodore took the recording to Detective Morrison. This is Martin Caldwell admitting he has the money in a shell company. The money he claimed Raymond stole. Detective Morrison listened to the recording twice. Her expression hardened. This changes things. But I need to verify the MC Holdings connection independently. If what you're saying is true, Martin Caldwell is going to face serious charges. What about Raymond? Are you dropping the charges against him? Not yet, but I'm shifting focus to Martin. Give me a few days. Those few days were torture. I was still facing embezzlement charges. Still couldn't work in my industry. Still had this accusation hanging over my head. But then Detective Morrison called. Mr. Hayes, I need you to come to the station. And bring your attorney. Theodore and I arrived within the hour. Detective Morrison looked grim, but satisfied. Mr. Hayes, after investigating MC Holdings and reviewing the financial records you provided, we've determined that you were not involved in the theft of the $1.5 million. In fact, we concluded that Martin Caldwell deliberately framed you to cover his own embezzlement from investors. Relief flooded through me. So I'm cleared. Completely. We're filing charges against Martin Caldwell for embezzlement, fraud, and filing a false police report. You're free to go. I almost cried. After weeks of stress, of being accused of a crime I didn't commit, I was finally cleared. What happens to Martin? I asked. We've issued an arrest warrant. He's being picked up as we speak. He'll face multiple felony charges. If convicted, he's looking at 10 to 20 years in prison. As we left the police station, Theodore shook my hand. Congratulations, Raymond. You fought for your innocence and won. That takes courage. I couldn't have done it without your help, or Beverly's, or Jackson's. Justice isn't a solo act. Theodore agreed. It takes a team. Now you need to decide what's next. Your reputation took a hit. Time to rebuild. Rebuilding wasn't easy. The story of my false accusation had spread through the construction industry. Some people believed I'd been cleared. Others still suspected I was guilty and had just gotten away with it. I couldn't get hired anywhere. Every interview ended the same way. We're impressed with your experience, but given the recent accusations, we're concerned about liability. It didn't matter that I'd been cleared. The accusation itself had poisoned my reputation. So I made a decision. I'd start my own company. After 23 years in construction, I knew the business inside and out. I had contacts, experience, credibility with suppliers and contractors. All I needed was capital. I had $43,000 in savings, enough to start small. I registered Hayes Construction LLC, got bonded and insured, and started bidding on small projects. My first job was a garage renovation, $10,000 project. Not glamorous, but honest work. The client was hesitant when they researched my name and found the embezzlement accusations. Mr. Hayes, we saw some concerning news articles about you. I understand your concern. I replied honestly. I was falsely accused by my former employer, who was covering up his own crimes. I was completely cleared. The man who accused me is currently awaiting trial for the embezzlement he blamed on me. I could provide police reports, court documents, whatever you need to verify my innocence. They agreed to hire me. The job went perfectly. They left glowing reviews online, specifically mentioning my integrity despite the false accusations. That review brought more work. Word spread that I was honest, reliable, and skilled. Within 6 months, I had steady business. Small projects mostly, but enough to pay bills and slowly grow. Martin's trial began 8 months after his arrest. Theodore and I attended every day of the proceedings. The prosecution laid out a damning case. Martin had been running a Ponzi scheme, taking money from new investors to pay old ones. When the scheme started collapsing, he'd moved remaining funds into MC Holdings, then framed me to buy time before disappearing. But he'd been caught before he could flee. The $1.5 million was recovered from the shell company account. The investors got some of their money back, though not all. Martin had spent hundreds of thousands on gambling and maintaining his lifestyle. Beverly testified against him. So did Russell and several other investors. So did I, explaining how Martin had accused me without evidence, how he destroyed my career based on lies. Martin's lawyer tried, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that Martin had legitimately believed I'd stolen the money. But the evidence was overwhelming. The transfer of records, the shell company, the recorded conversation with Russell, it all pointed to deliberate fraud and framing. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, filing false reports, witness tampering. The judge sentenced Martin to 15 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 5. He'd be nearly 70 when he got out. Mr. Caldwell, the judge said during sentencing, you didn't just steal money. You destroyed a man's reputation to cover your crimes. You weaponized a legal system against an innocent person. That level of callousness warrants significant punishment. Martin looked broken as they led him away in handcuffs. Part of me felt satisfaction, but mostly I just felt sad. 23 years I'd worked for that man, respected him, and he'd thrown me away without hesitation when it suited his purposes. After the trial, several of Martin's former clients reached out to me. They'd been left hanging when Caldwell Construction collapsed Following Martin's arrest. Projects half finished. Money lost. No one to turn to. Mr. Hayes, would you be willing to finish our project? We know you were the project manager before. You know the details better than anyone. It was a $500,000 commercial renovation. Exactly the kind of project I'd managed for Martin for years. But could my small company handle something that big? I'll need to bring in partners. I told them. Subcontractors I trust. But yes, I can finish your project. Better than Martin would have, honestly. I called every reliable contractor I'd worked with over the years. Electricians, plumbers, framers, finishers. Put together a team of professionals who'd been burned by Martin's collapse and were eager to work with someone trustworthy. We finished the commercial renovation in 4 months. On time, under budget, exceptional quality. The client was thrilled. They recommended me to 3 other businesses. Within a year, Hayes Construction had 15 employees and $2 million in annual revenue. Small compared to what Caldwell Construction had been, but growing steadily and built on solid ground instead of fraud. Beverly came to work for me as my accountant. I should have spoken up sooner, she said during her first week. I knew something was wrong with Martin's finances. I was too scared to risk my job. You helped when it mattered, I assured her. Without your records, I couldn't have proven my innocence. That took courage. Russell Pemberton, the investor who'd worn the wire, also reached out. Raymond, I want to invest in your company. Not in some scheme, legitimate equity investment. You're honest, skilled, and undervalued. I think Hayes Construction could be worth 10 times what it is now. He invested $200,000 for 10% equity. That capital allowed us to bid on bigger projects, hire more staff, and expand our capabilities. 2 years after Martin had accused me of theft, Hayes Construction had 25 employees and $5 million in annual revenue. We were competing for the same level of projects I used to manage for Martin. People in the industry noticed. Raymond Hayes? Didn't he get accused of embezzlement? Falsely accused. He was completely cleared. Actually, he was a victim of embezzlement by his boss. The guy's in prison now. Oh, well, I've heard Hayes does good work. Maybe we should consider him for our next project. Slowly, painfully, my reputation rebuilt. Each successful project, each satisfied client, each honest dealing, it all added up. The stain of Martin's accusation faded as people saw who I really was. I thought about Martin sometimes. Sitting in prison, knowing he destroyed his own life through greed and fraud. He had a successful company, a good reputation, clients who trusted him, and he'd thrown it all away. For what? Money he couldn't keep? A lifestyle he couldn't sustain? Pride that refused to admit failure? I couldn't understand it. I'd never had much money, but I'd had self-respect. I'd had integrity. I'd been able to sleep at night, knowing I'd earned every dollar honestly. Martin had lost all of that in his pursuit of more, and in trying to save himself, he'd tried to destroy me. But he'd failed. I was still here, still building, still growing, and he was locked away. His legacy reduced to cautionary tale about fraud and false accusation. 3 years after the accusation, I was contacted by a reporter writing an article about white-collar crime. Mr. Hayes, I'd like to interview you about being falsely accused of embezzlement, how you cleared your name and rebuilt your career. I agreed to the interview. The article ran in a major business magazine. Innocent until proven guilty, how Raymond Hayes survived false accusation and rebuilt his construction empire. The article brought national attention. Other people who've been falsely accused of crimes reached out, asking for advice. How did you prove your innocence? How did you rebuild your reputation? I told them what Theodore had told me. Justice takes a team. Get a good lawyer. Document everything. Investigate the accusations thoroughly. And most importantly, don't give up. The truth matters, even when it's hard to prove. The publicity from the article brought more business. Companies specifically sought out Hayes Construction because of my reputation for integrity. We want to work with someone we can trust, someone who won't cut corners or hide problems. By year 4, we had 50 employees and $12 million in revenue. Russell's investment had appreciated significantly. Raymond, I want to double down. Another $400,000 for additional equity. Why? I asked. You're already making good returns. Because I believe in you. And because I've learned that integrity is rare in business. When you find it, you invest in it. I accepted his investment. Used it to open a second location in a neighboring city. Hired local contractors. Built relationships with new suppliers. Expanded our reach. Beverly was now my CFO, making 3 times what Martin had paid her. You know what's funny? She said one day. I make more working for you than I did working for Martin. And your company is completely legitimate. He was paying me less while stealing millions. Crime doesn't pay, I said. Not in the long run. Apparently honesty pays pretty well too, Beverly laughed. Year 5 brought the ultimate vindication. A major development company was seeking bids for a $50 million mixed-use project. Apartments, retail, office space. Exactly the kind of prestige project Martin used to pursue when Caldwell Construction was at its peak. I bid on it, against companies twice my size with decades of history. I didn't expect to win, but then I got the call. Mr. Hayes, we're awarding the project to Hayes Construction. Your bid wasn't the lowest, but your reputation for integrity and quality craftsmanship made you our first choice. $50 million. The biggest project I'd ever managed, now under my own company name. It was terrifying and exhilarating. We assembled a team of 60 craftsmen. I personally oversaw every phase. Planning, permitting, foundation, framing, finishing. Worked 60-hour weeks. But this time for my own company, building my own legacy. The project took 18 months. We finished on time and under budget. The client was ecstatic. Local news covered the ribbon-cutting ceremony, featuring Hayes Construction prominently. 5 years ago, Raymond Hayes was accused of embezzling $1.5 million. The reporter said, today he's completing a $50 million project that showcases why false accusations can't keep good people down. I was interviewed at the ceremony. Mr. Hayes, what would you say to your former boss, Martin Caldwell, if you could speak to him now? I thought carefully. I'd say I forgive him, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because holding on to anger would only poison my own life. Martin made his choices. They destroyed him, but they didn't destroy me. I've built something better than what he took from me. That interview clip went viral. Millions of views. Comments flooded in, "This is what integrity looks like." Raymond Hayes is a class act. From falsely accused to thriving business owner. That's a real success story. The publicity brought opportunities I'd never imagined. A publishing company wanted me to write a book about my experience. False accusation. How I cleared my name and built my dream. I wrote it over 6 months, working late nights after job site visits. Told the whole story. Martin's accusation, the investigation, clearing my name, rebuilding my reputation, growing Hayes Construction. The book became a bestseller in the business category. Not massive sales, but steady. People going through similar situations found hope in my story. If Raymond Hayes can survive false accusation, maybe I can too. I donated half the book profits to a legal defense fund for people falsely accused of crimes who couldn't afford good attorneys. Everyone deserves a defense, not just people with money. Speaking engagements followed. Business conferences, college classes, workshops on integrity in business. I wasn't a natural speaker, but I had a story people wanted to hear. How did you stay calm when accused? Someone asked at one event. I didn't always stay calm. I admitted I was terrified, angry, desperate. But I focused on what I could control, gathering evidence, finding good legal help, documenting the truth. I couldn't control Martin's lies, but I could control my response to them. What if you hadn't been able to prove your innocence? That question haunted me. Then I'd probably be in prison right now. That's the reality of false accusations. Sometimes innocent people get convicted. I was lucky. I had evidence, good legal help, and resources to investigate. Not everyone has that. Year 6 brought another milestone. Hayes Construction hit $20 million in annual revenue. We now had 80 employees across 2 locations. We completed over 100 projects, from small renovations to major commercial buildings. I was 59 years old, financially stable, professionally respected. I'd gone from falsely accused embezzler to successful business owner in 6 years. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just accepted Martin's accusation. If I'd been too scared or too poor to fight back. I'd be in prison, reputation destroyed, life ruined. But I'd fought, and that made all the difference. Beverly brought me interesting news one day. Raymond, remember MC Holdings? The shell company Martin created? Of course. Why? The court liquidated it as part of victim restitution. All assets sold, money distributed to Martin's victims. But there was one curious thing. Martin had transferred an additional $300,000 into that account 2 months before you caught him. Money beyond what he'd taken from the investment scheme. Where'd that money come from? That's the question. I think Martin had been embezzling from Caldwell Construction itself for years. Not just from investors. From his own company. He was stealing from everyone. That revelation was both shocking and unsurprising. Martin had been a con artist to his core. He'd stolen from investors, from his company, probably from clients. And when it all started falling apart, he'd try to pin it on me. I wondered if other employees had been blamed for Martin's theft over the years. Had there been others before me who didn't have the resources to fight back? Who'd taken the fall for Martin's crimes? I'd never know. But it reinforced why I was so committed to running Hayes Construction with complete transparency and integrity. Every employee gets to see our books, I told new hires. You'll know exactly how much we make, where the money goes, how much profit we keep. I never want anyone here to wonder if they're being cheated. That transparency built incredible loyalty. Employees stayed with Hayes Construction for years. Several had been with me since the early days. They'd taken a chance on a falsely accused project manager trying to start over. Now, they were part of a thriving company. Jackson Ward, the private investigator who'd helped expose Martin, became a good friend. We'd have lunch occasionally, talking about the case and life in general. Raymond, I've investigated dozens of embezzlement cases. Jackson said one afternoon, most of them, the accused person is actually guilty. You were one of the rare exceptions. Someone genuinely innocent being framed. How do you tell the difference between someone who's innocent and someone who's just claiming innocence? Details. Innocent people can account for every transaction, every decision, every moment. Guilty people have gaps in their story. Things they can't explain. You had perfect records. That's how I knew you were telling the truth. I kept records because I'm naturally organized, I said, but it saved my life. That's the lesson right there. Documentation is defense. If you're living honestly, document everything. It'll protect you if someone tries to take you down. I implemented that philosophy at Hayes Construction. Every project meticulously documented. Every transaction recorded. Every decision explained in writing. If anyone ever accused us of wrongdoing, we'd have proof of our innocence. Year 7 brought unexpected news. Martin Caldwell had appealed his conviction. His new lawyer claimed the evidence against him was circumstantial, that the recordings were inadmissible, that he'd been wrongfully convicted. This is ridiculous, I told Theodore when he called with the news. They have bank records, transfer documents, his own recorded admission. How is that circumstantial? It's a Hail Mary attempt, Theodore explained. Martin knows he's facing 15 years. He's trying anything to reduce his sentence or get released. The appeal probably won't succeed, but we need to be prepared in case we're called to testify again. The appeal hearing was scheduled for 3 months later. I attended with Theodore, sitting in the courtroom as Martin's new lawyer tried to dismantle the case. The prosecution relied heavily on statements made by Mr. Caldwell in a conversation he didn't know was being recorded. The lawyer argued that violates his right to privacy and should be excluded. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Caldwell was speaking to someone he defrauded. The recording was legally obtained with that victim's consent. The statements are admissible. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, the prosecution never proved that Mr. Caldwell intended to frame Mr. Hayes. Perhaps he genuinely believed his employee had stolen the money. Theodore stood up. Your Honor, may I address that claim? The judge nodded. Theodore presented evidence we'd held back from the original trial. Emails Martin had sent to himself outlining his plan to blame me. Detailed notes about how to make it look like I'd stolen the money. These emails showed deliberate planning, Theodore said. Mr. Caldwell knew exactly what he was doing. He calculated every step of framing an innocent man. Martin's face went pale as the emails were read aloud, his own words damning him. If this falls apart, blame Raymond. He has account access. He's a perfect scapegoat. No one will question it. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. These emails clearly show premeditation and intent to frame Mr. Hayes. The appeal is denied. Mr. Caldwell's conviction stands. Martin exploded. This is a setup? Hayes is lying. He probably wrote those emails himself. Mr. Caldwell, control yourself or you'll be held in contempt, the judge warned. The emails came from your own account, sent from your personal computer. The digital forensics are irrefutable. You planned this fraud and framing. Your conviction is just... As security escorted Martin from the courtroom, he looked at me with pure hatred. You destroyed my life, Hayes. You took everything from me. No, Martin, I replied calmly. You destroyed your own life. I just refused to let you destroy mine, too. That was the last time I saw Martin Caldwell. He'd served his full 15 years. No early release. No reduced sentence. Justice had been served completely. Driving home from the courthouse, I felt a weight lift. This chapter was truly closed now. Martin couldn't hurt me anymore. His appeals were exhausted. He'd face the consequences of his actions for the next decade. Meanwhile, Hayes Construction continued thriving. Year 8 brought $30 million in revenue. We opened a third location. Started specializing in sustainable building practices, green construction methods that reduced environmental impact. This is the future of construction, I told my team. Building responsibly, using sustainable materials, creating structures that last generations without harming the planet. We became known for that specialty. Clients sought us out specifically for eco-friendly projects. Universities, hospitals, forward-thinking developers. They all wanted buildings that met modern environmental standards. I was 60 years old now, could have retired comfortably, but I loved the work, loved watching buildings rise from empty lots, loved employing good people, loved proving every day that integrity and success weren't mutually exclusive. Beverly approached me one afternoon with a proposal. Raymond, I've been with you for 8 years now. I've watched you build this company from nothing. I want to buy in as a partner, not just equity investment like Russell, actual partnership, co-owner status. I was surprised but pleased. You've earned it, Bev. You've been crucial to our success. What percentage are you thinking? 20%. I'll buy it at fair market value. And I'll stay with the company until retirement. This is my future too now. We structured the deal through attorneys. Beverly bought 20% of Hayes Construction for $2 million. Money she'd saved over years of good salary and smart investing. She became Chief Operating Officer, handling day-to-day management, while I focused on major projects and strategic direction. Russell remained a minority investor with his 10%. He was thrilled about the company's growth. My $400,000 investment is now worth almost $6 million. Best investment I ever made. You took a chance on me when no one else would. I reminded him, I won't forget that. You've paid me back 100-fold, not just in money, but in proving that honest business can succeed. That's worth more than any return on investment. That year, Hayes Construction was featured in a documentary about business ethics. Raymond Hayes, from false accusation to industry leader. The filmmakers interviewed me, Beverly, Russell, Theodore, even Detective Morrison. When I first met Raymond, I wasn't sure what to believe. Detective Morrison admitted on camera. He seemed genuine, but so do many guilty people. It was only when the evidence clearly showed Martin Caldwell's fraud that I knew Raymond was truly innocent. This case taught me to investigate thoroughly before accepting accusations at face value. The documentary aired on a business cable network, got decent viewership, but more importantly, It cemented my reputation as someone who'd survived the worst and come out stronger. Young people reached out constantly. Mr. Hayes, I'm starting a construction company. What advice would you give? 3 things, I always replied. First, document everything. Keep perfect records. It protects you legally and operationally. Second, treat people fairly. Your reputation is built on how you treat employees, subcontractors, and clients. Third, never compromise your integrity for profit. The moment you start cutting corners or hiding problems, you're on a path to failure. Today, I'm 62 years old. 8 years have passed since Martin Caldwell screamed at me about $1.5 million I'd never received. 8 years since he tried to destroy my life to save his own. Hayes Construction now has 100 employees and $40 million in annual revenue. We're one of the most respected construction companies in the region. We've completed hundreds of projects. We've built schools, hospitals, office buildings, apartment complexes, structures that will stand for generations. I still think about that morning sometimes. Walking into my office, coffee in hand, expecting a normal day. Then Martin's accusation. The immediate panic. The certainty that my life was about to be destroyed. It almost was destroyed. If I hadn't had savings to hire Theodore. If Beverly hadn't risked her job to help me. If Jackson hadn't been skilled enough to uncover Martin's fraud. If Russell hadn't been willing to wear a wire. If Detective Morrison hadn't been thorough enough to see the truth. Any one of those things going differently, and I'd be in prison right now. Convicted of a crime I didn't commit. Life ruined by one man's lies. But I fought. I documented. I investigated. I refused to accept blame for something I didn't do. And that determination saved me. People ask if I'm bitter about the time and money it took to clear my name. The answer is no. I'm grateful. Grateful for good people who helped me. Grateful for a legal system that eventually worked correctly. Grateful for the opportunity to rebuild bigger than before. Martin Caldwell thought he could sacrifice me to save himself. He was wrong. His betrayal revealed his character and ultimately destroyed only him. Meanwhile, I discovered strengths I didn't know I had. I built something meaningful from the ashes of a false accusation. Sometimes I wonder what Martin thinks about now, sitting in prison. Does he regret his choices? Does he understand that his greed and fraud destroyed everything he'd built? Does he realize that trying to frame me was his final, fatal mistake? I'll never know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Martin is where he belongs, facing the consequences of his actions. I'm where I belong, building honestly and sleeping peacefully. That's the real difference between us. He pursued wealth at any cost and lost everything. I pursued integrity and found success beyond anything I'd imagined. The $1.5 million he accused me of stealing, the courts recovered it and returned it to his victims. I never touched a penny of it. Never needed to. I built my wealth honestly, one project at a time, one satisfied client at a time, one ethical decision at a time. When Martin shouted, "Where's the $1.5 million I gave you?" That morning 8 years ago, the truth was simple. He never gave me anything. But his false accusation gave me something he never expected. The motivation to prove I could succeed on my own terms, the determination to build something better than what he'd tried to destroy, and the satisfaction of knowing that truth and integrity ultimately prevail. My boss shouted, "Where's the money?" But the truth was he never gave it to me. And in trying to destroy me with that lie, he destroyed only himself and freed me to become more than I ever was under his employment. That's justice. That's karma. That's the long arc of the moral universe bending toward what's right. And that's why, despite everything, I'm grateful for that terrible morning. Because it led me here, to this life, this company, this legacy built on honesty instead of fraud. Martin Caldwell tried to bury me with false accusations. Instead, he planted seeds that grew into something he could never build himself. A business founded on truth, sustained by integrity, and destined to outlast his memory. If this story resonated with you, please hit subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been falsely accused of something? How did you handle it? What advice would you give someone facing false accusations? I'd love to hear your experiences and perspectives. Remember, documentation is defense, Integrity is strength, and truth ultimately prevails when you fight for it. Never accept blame for what you didn't do. Never stop gathering evidence, and never underestimate the power of honest living. Thanks for reading, and know that false accusations can destroy only those who don't fight back with truth and determination.